In the heart of West Africa, a storm is rising. But this is not a storm of destruction. It is a storm of renewal, of awakening. It is the rumble of footsteps, the thunder of a people reclaiming their destiny. And leading that storm is a name the world must now know. Ibrahim Traoré. Not just a soldier. Not just a head of state. But a spark lighting the fire of a new African revolution. Every revolution begins somewhere. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, it began in Bondekui, a quiet town in western Burkina Faso. Born in 1988, not into wealth or power, but into the deep soil of tradition and hardship. His roots were humble. His world defined by the sweat of farmers, the hopes of mothers, and the resilience of the forgotten. He was raised not by books alone, but by rhythm, the rhythm of African soil under bare feet, the wisdom of village elders, and the silent language of the land. It was here, in the womb of obscurity, that destiny whispered. And Traoré listened. He pursued education in Ouagadougou and later trained in the military academy. But even as he rose in rank, he remained grounded in principle. This was no ordinary officer. He was known for his silence, for listening before speaking, and for always carrying more questions than answers. Then came the Sahel crisis, terrorism, displacement, fear. Northern Burkina Faso descended into chaos, and the state failed its people. But one soldier did not look away. He stepped forward. September 30, 2022. The world headlines called it a coup. But for millions of Burkinabe, it was something more. It was a corrective movement. The regime had promised security and failed. It had sworn allegiance to the people but knelt before foreign powers. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, at just 34 years old, made a choice to break ranks with complicity and stand with the people. His rise to leadership was not a grab for power, but a grab for justice. The military convoy that rode into the capital that day was not merely an act of force. It was an act of defiance. Traoré addressed the nation with clarity. Burkina Faso must reclaim its dignity. Our land. Our future. Our voice. The people erupted in support. Young and old filled the streets. Songs were sung. Drums were beaten. And in their eyes burned the hope they had long buried. But this was only the beginning. Burkina Faso, like much of Africa, has long danced to a song written in foreign capitals. Contracts signed in shadows. Aid tied to silence. Resources looted while schools remain in ruins. Troops stationed on African soil, not for protection, but for control. Ibrahim Traoré would have none of it. He tore up the old playbook. He expelled French troops. He refused military assistance that came with strings. He questioned the CFA franc. He re-examined mining contracts. He challenged the very essence of dependency. But this wasn't just policy. It was psychological liberation. We must stop begging for our own freedom, he declared. Africa must rise with its own spine. While others called for caution, Traoré called for courage. While diplomats spoke in riddles, he spoke with fire. And so, the revolution shifted from one man's act of resistance to a continent's call to rise. Africa has always been more than borders. Before colonial maps carved artificial nations, we were one people sharing trade, traditions, and spirit. But division was forced. Borders were built not to unite us, but to control us. Captain Ibrahim Traoré knows this history well. He doesn't speak of Burkina Faso as an island. He speaks of Africa as a body, with one heart, and it's time to heal it. Shortly after assuming power, Traoré made bold moves that stunned the continent. He reached out to Mali, to Niger, to the Sahel nations abandoned by global diplomacy. Together, they declared a regional front. Not just against terrorism, but against neocolonial interference. They signed defense agreements. They coordinated energy plans. They even discussed creating a joint currency. An independent Sahel bloc rooted in sovereignty, justice, and African pride. Critics scoffed. Some called it reckless. But for many, it felt like Sankara had returned, through the boldness of a new generation. Traoré doesn't just quote Pan-African legends. He acts on their dreams. And in doing so, he is turning old slogans into new structures. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. Nearly 60% of its population is under 25. Yet for decades, its leaders have been aging, detached, and out of touch. But now, something has shifted. In Ibrahim Traoré, the youth see themselves. He's 36. He speaks their slang. He understands their digital age. He wears military fatigues, not luxury suits. He posts on social media, not to show off, but to speak truth. He walks through dusty neighborhoods. He listens at town halls. He doesn't demand silence. He invites action. Under his leadership, a wave of youth consciousness is rising. Student unions are organizing workshops, not just protests. Youth-led cooperatives are reclaiming farmlands. Young engineers are building solar grids. Digital creators are using their platforms to educate, not just entertain. And Traoré, he amplifies them. Africa's youth must stop waiting for the future. You are the future, he said in a viral address. Pick up your tools, your minds, your voices. Rebuild this land with your own hands. This is not politics as usual. This is revolution from below. Africa is rich. Gold, uranium, bauxite, cobalt, oil, Sunday soil, water. Yet Africa is poor by design. Multinational corporations, often protected by foreign militaries and signed off by corrupt local elites, have plundered this wealth for decades. But under Ibrahim Traoré, the game is changing. One of his first moves was to renegotiate mining contracts. He launched audits into foreign companies extracting gold while paying pennies. He questioned why Burkina Faso was rich in minerals, but empty in hospitals. It is not normal, he said, that our children die of hunger while our land feeds foreign banks. He began talks to nationalize strategic resources. He explored gold for infrastructure deals with trusted partners, not exploiters. More importantly, he demanded transparency. Every contract, every export, every agreement. And his message to multinationals: pay fair, or leave. This startled the international elite, but inspired millions of Africans who have long suspected the truth: their poverty was engineered. Traoré's economic vision is not about revenge. It's about balance, fairness, dignity. He knows that true independence is not political, it's economic. And in this, he follows the footsteps of Nkrumah and Sankara, but walks them with 21st century boots. In the eyes of many, modern leadership is about policies and politics. Suits, charts, conferences. But in Africa, the roots run deeper. True leadership does not begin in a ballot box, it begins in spirit. It begins at the feet of the elders, in the hush of sacred groves, in the wisdom of ancestors whispered through rituals. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understands this. While he commands soldiers by day, by night he sits with spiritual guardians. He bows before traditional priests. He accepts the blessings of rainmakers, herbalists, and griots. Not for superstition, but for balance, for guidance, for power that speaks beyond bullets. In the weeks after his rise, spiritual leaders from every corner of Burkina Faso gathered, not to seek favor, but to fortify him. In ceremony after ceremony, they poured libation, chanted incantations, and invoked ancestral shields. Why? Because they recognized something rare. A man who does not dismiss tradition as outdated. A leader who wears both camouflage and spiritual armor. In a world racing toward artificial intelligence and machines, Traoré reminds Africa that its ancient ways are not backward, they are foundational. He fuses the past and the present. He bridges drumbeats with directives. He stands at the intersection of spirit and strategy. And in doing so, he awakens something long buried, the sacred dimension of African leadership. In Burkina Faso, as across Africa, women have always been the backbone. They till the fields. They raise their families. they carry the weight of water and war. But for too long, they have been sidelined in politics and policy. Under Ibrahim Traoré, this is changing. From the very beginning, he made clear: no revolution is complete without the women at the front. He increased the number of women in leadership roles, not as a gesture, but as a necessity. He appointed female commanders in the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland. He launched microcredit initiatives focused on female entrepreneurs. He expanded maternal health care and launched anti-violence campaigns. In village forums and urban councils, women are now speaking, not in whispers, but with authority. Traoré's revolution does not just wear boots and berets. It also wears headscarves and braids. In many communities, women have formed solidarity brigades. They educate. They defend. They organize. They heal. We are not just mothers of soldiers, one elder said. We are mothers of revolutions. And Traoré listens. He understands that Africa's liberation will not come from men alone. It will come from the balance of masculine courage and feminine wisdom, from unity, not domination. In this, his leadership is not just militarily bold, it is socially conscious. What happens when a young African leader says no to the West? What happens when a captain in fatigues rejects foreign military presence, shuts down exploitative contracts, and speaks of African unity? The world takes notice. Ibrahim Traoré has become more than a national figure. He is now a symbol, a lit torch in the fog of global geopolitics. In Paris, Washington, and Brussels, policymakers are nervous. In Beijing, Moscow, and Ankara, analysts are curious. And across Africa, the people are watching and rising. Traoré has spoken plainly at international forums. He has rejected hypocrisy in development discourse. He has questioned the legitimacy of international courts that jail African leaders but excuse Western war crimes. And he has called out double standards in foreign policy, where democracy is only supported when it serves foreign interests. His bold stance has inspired similar awakenings. In Mali, Niger, and beyond, people are demanding sovereignty. In Senegal, DR Congo, Togo, movements are brewing. This is not an isolated revolution. It is an African wave. One that refuses to be polite in its suffering. One that no longer sees global aid as salvation, but as shackles. One that is rewriting the rules, not for approval, but for liberation. No revolution is without its shadows. For Ibrahim Traoré, the risks are clear. Internal betrayal. External sabotage. Economic warfare. Assassination. But he walks forward, not blindly, but boldly. He has no illusions about the threats. He has faced plots, propaganda, cyber attacks, and pressure campaigns. He has seen allies turn. He has been tested with both temptation and terror. But he has one advantage many leaders do not. He does not hide. He walks among them. Eats with them. Weeps with them. And so, even if the enemy strikes at the head, the body remains strong. I am not building a kingdom, he once said. I am planting seeds that will outlive me. And that is the mark of a true revolutionary. Not to rule, but to awaken. Not to conquer, but to liberate. Not to shine alone, but to ignite others. As the drums echo through the Sahel, as the youth rise with sharpened minds, as the elders smile with ancient hope, a continent once torn apart begins to hum a new song. And leading that chorus is a soldier, with no master, no greed, and no fear. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. A name now etched in the annals of Africa's second liberation. The revolution is not just in Ouagadougou. It is in you, the viewer. The student. The mother. The builder. The farmer. The dreamer. This is your moment. Africa is stirring. And history is watching. So the question is no longer, will Africa rise? The question is, will you rise with it?